My name is Charlie McGrath. I'm the founder of WideAwakeNews.com and a host on the Rinse Radio Network. Tim Geithner recently came out and said that we're not going to have a Lehman moment come out of Europe. Now, he's been over there the last couple of days trying to quell fears that just that event would happen. And I guess we could look at the track record of Tim Geithner, Ben Bernanke, the powers that be in Washington, D.C. and on Wall Street, and see if their predictions have held true. And it has been holding true for the power elite around the planet. You know, there is no crisis coming to them. Yet, in a recent interview that he had with none other than Jim Cramer, he said that the United States has already entered a crisis. We're at the beginning of a crisis. Now, of course, he was pitching another sales job there, but this one happened to be for the $500 billion jobs plan. Now, it's okay to say that there's going to be no crisis when you're trying to calm down markets. But it's also okay to come out and say that we're in a crisis as long as it's to pass another piece of emergency legislation like we've seen time and time again. Again, we see the same exact tactics being used. Try to scare the populace into giving more of their financial future away. It's bad enough that we spend $1.3 trillion in the first round of stimulus if you factor in interest, and nothing is accomplished of it. And we give out trillions of dollars, not only to too big to fail banks in 2008, but now we find out that, through a lawsuit from Bloomberg, that trillions of dollars went to foreign banks, that now we have to be calmed down, that there's going to be no Lehman moment from those same exact foreign banks. Well, the fact of the matter is Tim Geithner is right in this situation, except he's wrong about the timing of it. He's saying we're at the beginning of the crisis. We're deep into this crisis. If you're on Main Street, this crisis has been going on for almost 4 years now. In fact, if we look at some of the numbers coming out recently, we see the poverty level has spiked in this country. In 2000, it was at 11.3%, and in 2003, it had grown to 15.1%. Now, if we use the same metric they used 30 years ago, like they used to count labor, that number would be a lot higher, but the government tells us that there is no inflation. So they take out food, they take out energy, and then they tell you the inflation rate's at 2%. But if you're living on Main Street, you realize that that number is 100% bogus. Even with that, we see an increase to 15.1%. Now, we have less workers working now than we do in 2000. The year 2000, 11 years ago, we have less workers today than we did then. Now, that would be a shockingly bad statistic, even if the population has stayed exactly the same. But in fact, the population has grown by 30 million. Shadow Stats recently put our unemployment rate at 23%, an effective rate of 23%. Between the years 1969, just 42 years ago, and 2009, the age group of 30 to 50, you've seen your income fall 27% in this country when it's adjusted for inflation. And the average family in this country makes $31,244. 90% of the people in this country, that is your household income. That is what you make. That's what you get to spend in order to survive in this damaged economy. That number happens to be a 50-year low compared to the GDP. Now, we see all the Wall Street bonuses shooting through the roof. We see the top 10% owning 80% of the stock market. We see the integration of wealth continue to go to the very top elite while Main Street suffers and dies. And in fact, since 2006, we've seen a 40% increase in the number of people who have to go to a food bank in order to put food on their table. Bad enough that we've seen a 74% increase in food stamps since 2007, but now 40% increase in the people who have to go to the food bank in order to get food. Now, this is the crisis that we get to live in. This is the crisis created by the too big to fail. This is the crisis created by these people that can't do anything wrong. People that Tim Geithner oversaw during the collapse of 2008. The same exact type of people were telling us that the crisis was a $30 billion subprime problem back then, and now they're telling us, don't worry, there's nothing to see coming down the road in Europe, and oh yeah, we do have a crisis here, give us more of your financial freedom. But what's really happening in D.C., what's really happening on your behalf, Senator Grassley found out when he got a letter from the so-called enforcement agent at the SEC recently telling him that they've destroyed thousands of documents that led to investigations on companies like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Bernie Madoff. Now, even though the enforcement agent said, well, you know what? We didn't destroy anything that was important. It is completely impossible to know that because now they no longer exist. Set aside the fact that it's against the law. The government is supposed to keep records on file and not destroy them because they decide it's of no importance. Tim Geithner's right. Crisis, we're in a crisis. It isn't at the beginning, but it's about to heat up and everybody's about to realize it. Stories are attached. That's all I got.